Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Our first story about a lady who wanted to make a profit selling a retro bicycle. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Greedy Bicycle Lady. Sure, we've all dealt with idiotic Craigslist sellers out there, but this woman was too greedy not to have this coming to her. I collect vintage road bicycles, of which one showed up on our local Craigslist for $100 being sold by Greedy Bicycle Lady, GBL. It's an upper entry-level road bike by one of the better English manufacturers of the 1970s. At best, it's worth $300 clean, fixed up, and perfect. As it is now, $200 to $250 tops. I know a good deal when I see one, so I email GBL with my phone number, and I tell her I can come by within an hour and buy it. Shortly thereafter, I receive this response in my inbox. Okay, so I now realize that the bike is worth more. I've upped my price to $200. Give me a call if you're interested. It's not as good a deal as before, but it's still a bike I'd like to have in my collection. This time I call her to confirm an appointment time. I haven't been talking to her for 30 seconds before I'm informed the price is now $350 based on the latest inquiries she's had, which have been numerous. I don't mind a bit of friendly competition, but this is ridiculous. Sure, she has the right to get what the market will offer, but deals cannot be made with sellers that cannot stand behind their word. I ask if she's willing to stand by this price if I commit to driving halfway across town to pick it up right that minute. No. Lady, I doubt you'll find anyone willing to put up with this nonsense. I could drive across town and find that you've doubled the price by the time I get there. Good day. Edit. I think it should be noted that I'm really not interested in the bike anymore at this point. Vintage road bikes were unusually common in my city at the time of this story, and I knew with time I could put my efforts towards something much nicer. And I did, with the acquisition of 2 chrome Schwinn Paramounts shortly thereafter. Not to mention that my collection was already quite sizable, at the time, a fleet of over 15 classic and vintage road and touring bicycles. But back to the story. My last email seemed to end any hope of further discussion, but too many old movies have taught me that the greedy person is the easiest to have fun with, especially when spare email addresses are close at hand. No longer was it about the bike. Within 10 minutes, GBL had a $500 offer from Mr. A ready to come by, and 5 minutes later, Mr. B just had to have the bike for $750, and thus GBL told Mr. A that the price was now $850. So Mr. A confirmed that he'd matched that offer while Mr. B dropped out. But then Mr. C pops up, "We'll buy now, no questions asked, $1,500. And of course, GBL will take Mr. C's offer any day of the week, but Mr. C can't commit to show up until the weekend, almost a week later. That's fine with her. Mr. A, however, soon gets an email with the new $1,500 price. Mr. A can match it. But Mr. A drops off the face of the earth come his appointment time the next day. So she tries to get Mr. C back, who confirms for that weekend, then drops off the face of the earth too. The day after Mr. C misses his appointment, Mr. A gets back in touch with our greedy bicycle-owning friend, who apologizes for his family emergency. He makes an appointment for the weekend after, and Mr. A misses that appointment too. In the meantime, Mr. B wants to know if she'll do his $750 as the ad still appears to be up, and Mr. B doesn't show up for his appointment. And thus begins a vicious circle of emails from Bicycle Lady to Mr. A, B, and C as she desperately tries to get at least one sucker with more money than brains to her doorstep following 3 weeks of runaround. Of course, nobody ever replies, and by this point, no real buyers from Craigslist are willing to bother with her nonsense either. And so the bike disappears off Craigslist, but almost exactly a year later, GBL posts the bike back up, same seller name, new picture, nothing done to improve the bike's condition. The asking price is a flat $500. Thus, I emailed her from my original address, as myself, just to be a pest. Remember me, lady? When you want to talk about that $200 price again, give me a call. Maybe you'll actually get a sell it this time. Or M-shot. And our second story. Dine and Dash, I'm coming for that butt. In my youth, my profession of choice was serving at a local Irish pub. Had a lot of good times and some great stories, including one where some dude straight up blew up our bathroom. No, seriously, dude blew up the entire toilet with explosive powder. Getting back to our story, this scene is a very crowded bar, 2 floors, and both have an outside section all packed. I was working the downstairs patio along with a few bar tables inside. After grabbing some drinks for a table outside, I noticed another had sat down in my section. It was 5 women, all very attractive. At first, they seemed really nice, very complimentary, and they were all ordering top shelf. This is good. Maybe I'll get a good tip out of them. Plus, one of them was hitting on me pretty heavy, so maybe I'll get to give her a tip as well. Know what I mean? The night goes on. I notice one of them wandering around inside for a minute before going back out. No big deal. I did just drop off the check. Maybe she was getting out some cash. Nope. I head outside, and they're gone. Just absolutely nowhere to be seen. F. They ran up a near $200 bill, and what was inside? A measly $10. Now, anyone who works restaurants in America knows that some employers could be jerks and make you pay out of pocket if this happens to you. Total D-move. My managers were fantastic people, though, and pretty much comped most of it, but still, I wasn't going to let this slide. I go into full-blown detective mode. As noted above, when I noticed one of the girls lingering inside, she briefly had talked to a table. Sitting there was a group of middle-aged people who were so amazing, I'd love to give them a big ol' hug right now if possible. I told them the story, and they actually offered to pay the bill, but not before one of the women noted that she actually had a short conversation with one of the Dine and Dashers. Oh, yes, we got a lead. I was informed that they were heading to the local club. Maybe should have figured that. They seemed the type, and there's only one in town, but whatever. I did decline their offer to pay it off, as I would be getting what's mine from the culprits, not some great people. The revenge. I informed my manager what happened, what information I gained, and what was about to be done. I grabbed a food runner named Bill, in pretty good shape, older dude, super guy in general. I was also 19 at the time, and he was an adult. His presence was very helpful. After that, I informed my tables I would be back, that one of my coworkers would take care of them, and off to the races. We walk over to the bar and explain the situation to the doorman. This dude was so stoked on helping, he in turn takes us to the upstairs bouncers. Those bouncers look at me, and one says with a booming voice, the homies were huge AF, "All you gotta do is point them out. We have no tolerance for that kind of behavior." Can I take a minute to express the pure joy and adrenaline that pumped through my veins when I walked through the doors and saw the whole group grinding together? Picture Leonid stoutly raising his arm, pointing to the offenders, and confidently saying, "There they are." That's how I felt. It was glorious. They turned with a look of absolute horror before making a break for the door. The bouncers were majestic lions where the drunk ladies were gazelles who spent maybe a little too much time at the watering hole. What followed was an epic walk of shame. They were ferried down 2 floors while people gawked and cheered before finally arriving outside. And who do I see there? It's Brad, the bike cop. I explain the situation, but mention I don't want to press charges as long as they pay. So while being detained, one of them hands me her credit card, and I walk back to the restaurant triumphantly. It is done. I have won. When I walked back, I guess word had spread, and I actually got an ovation after I hefted the credit card over my head. Effing brilliant. A top moment. I was on cloud 9 for a week after that. Anyway, I actually want to include a short follow-up. I was scheduled the next day to work, and who do I see but one of the women? She sees me and immediately apologizes. Apparently, they're all coworkers, and whenever they go out, they take turns handling the bill. She told me that she was under the impression that it was taken care of, and even noted that she left $10, even though she was assured I was already tipped well. Very, very apologetic. She was forgiven. Crap happens, and it was already dealt with. I also assured her she gave me a story for life, and sometimes those can be more valuable than any amount of money. And our last story. A little email error keeps on giving. Not too long ago, I accepted a contract position as a remote worker in a relatively small healthcare company. I'm required to report monthly travel expenses to an accounting manager who I'll call Victoria. Victoria isn't my boss and doesn't have any supervising duties over me or my regional colleagues. However, she always acts as if she is and sends us condescending emails telling us how to do our jobs, even though she's never worked in our specific role before. Most of us ignore her emails and submit our expense reports and receipts without acknowledging the context. As long as we get paid on time for our expenses, no one wants to deal with her. 2 things I should mention here. 1, Victoria hates when anyone calls her anything but her full first name, Victoria. She rages when coworkers call her Vicky or Tori or V and is prompt to correct them. 2, she's a kiss butt to upper management and has no qualms about throwing people under the bus to make herself look better. Recently, she realized that none of us field workers were following through on her suggestions, so she emailed and copied our whole team and senior leadership, direct manager, regional director, VP operations, and CFO, calling us out for not following through on her instructions. Some of my less diplomatic coworkers responded on the thread stating it wasn't her place to interfere in our department to begin with and explained in depth why her suggestions weren't practical for remote workers, and that this would be obvious to someone who had worked in our specific roles before. Me? I'm polite, but I'm also a petty B-turd. I replied to all on the email chain the following: "Thank you, Vicky, for your suggestions. However, as others have stated, they would increase the time we would need on site and reduce overall efficiency. Perhaps we could arrange a separate meeting between our departments to brainstorm mutually beneficial solutions to the issues you've raised. As always, Vicky, we appreciate your efforts to assist in streamlining our processes." My colleagues took notice of my intended slight and started referencing her as Vicky also in their emails. Because she started the email thread, all the senior leadership assumed she went by Vicky because of the reply and now also refer to her as such as well. She hasn't corrected anyone on the email because, as I mentioned, she's a kiss butt and too afraid to correct senior leadership. Also, she just showed herself to be incompetent outside of her specific role and is laying low. So for now, she's Vicky. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.